Stas23 here. In today's knife therapy, I have the Bestech Fairchild. This is another design collaboration with one of their in-house designers, Mr. Kombou, who has so many designs now with Bestech, and I've reviewed a lot of them, and I've liked a lot of them. This one right here is an absolute behemoth, so if you like big knives, stay tuned because you're going to like this one. All right, so let's get some specs out of the way. You have an overall length of 9.2 inches, a blade length of 3.9 inches, a grip area from here to here, 4 inches, or if you want to choke up, it's 4.8 inches. Handle thickness is 0.55, and close width in the pocket is 1.79 inches. Your blade stock thickness is a whopping 0.196 or 4.98 millimeters. And the behind the edge thickness on my particular knife is around 16,000, sharpened at 24 degrees per side. Kombou has a very futuristic, somewhat techno design aesthetic, and I love the overall lines of this knife. You have this nice gentle arc that goes from the back of the scales all the way to the tip. And I mean, look at that blade. You have a very substantial, massive chunk of CPM S35 VN steel. That's it's a good steel, and Bestech does a good job with their heat treating. This particular one has a blasted stone wash finish on it, and your tip on it is it's going to be able to do some nice fine tasks, but it's not overly dainty to where you're scared you can break it without doing much. You have these nice lines that come from the handle that continue onto the swedge of the top swedge of the knife, and then you have another swedge right here that is by the jimping. I just think that looks very nice and clean. The jimping, as you can see, it is somewhat rounded over the top, so it's not super grippy. I'd call it maybe medium traction at the most. You have a pretty wide blade hole there that has a nice chamfer going all the way around it, so you don't have any sharp edges where you don't want them. And you have a full forward finger choil that should fit most people's finger. Well, enough blabbering. Let's get into the testing. The knife came with a pretty good edge out of the box. Didn't have a ton of bite, but that high flat grind is such a good slicer. Comes down to a nice thin edge, so it's passing through the cardboard very effortlessly. And also that point being below the pivot means that in that drop point situation, you won't have a very abrupt belly going up. So I had no problems sliding out of the cardboard when I was doing the cutting. I also noticed that being choked up on the blade was always where I wanted to be, because otherwise you're really far from that cutting edge, and in this situation that cardboard would get caught up in that choil area, so it just made a lot more sense for me. Choked up in the hammer grip, I felt I could get the most power when I was pushing down. But it was much more comfortable for me in the saber grip, plus I had a lot more control because I'm kind of keeping pressure on the top of that blade. I did find when I was choked up, my pinky landed on a hump from that forward choil in the handle, causing a minor hot spot, nothing that crazy. And I only noticed it as I started to increase more and more pressure into the Pine 2x4. Other than that, it was very comfortable. The contoured scales felt nice, and I'm showing you all that right there. That's the hump I was talking about. But other than that, it felt really good. Once again, we are using the 3/4 twisted sisal rope instead of the 1/2 inch because I was out of the 1/2 inch. But the broad drop point blade has a lot of mass to it, so it didn't take much downward force to get through the rope. It was very comfortable, and this was one of the very few times that doing this test didn't suck. I mean, it just usually is really hard on my hands, blisters up my fingers, but that pinch grip was very comfortable. I had a lot of control, and I mixed it up. I could do those little like rocking cuts like you're seeing now, kind of like, you know, you're cutting some cucumbers or something. And we ended up making 40 cuts on this. I only stopped because I wasn't finished with the testing. But this is kind of how this knife shines, with that perfect amount of belly. I think you could just get away with pretty much any type of cutting comfortably with this drop point blade. This is another instance, having that tip below the pivot makes you know, those drag cuts very easy, because you don't have to lift the blade up as high as you would say like a clip point. I knew once I did that 3/4 sisal rope cutting and how great it did, that this part of the test would be an absolute breeze, and I was right. It just has, like I said, the perfect amount of belly for just about any type of cutting you're going to do, especially on these cutting boards, like on a flat surface. If you're going to do like a pinch grip, not so much if you're going to be holding it in like a hammer grip. Your knuckles will hit the board, but I don't ever do that when I'm cutting on the cutting board. It gets through all this material just fine. It still has a really good edge at this point. And later you're going to see when we go to the denim, it is a massive, look how thick this denim is. And it's got tons of This is where the belt line is and the pockets. So I'm cutting through tons of seams, pockets of the jeans. And it does fine. It doesn't have a lot of aggression left to the edge, but I'd say it still has a very good working edge at the end of this, and after I stropped it up and brought it back to cutting phone book paper cleanly. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed that testing. I enjoyed making it with this one. I think it performed pretty darn well. Now let's get into the action of this knife. That's another star of this knife besides the performance of this blade. Watch this. I had to tighten this down all the way and like kind of crank down on it. Just watch that. Before, it would be an absolute guillotine. If you want, you can drop it like that as long as you're close up, but you're definitely not going to want to be at the back side of this handle choil, because you're gonna bite yourself at the least. You definitely don't want this substantial blade coming down on your finger and chopping it off. But very, very smooth action, riding on ceramic cage ball bearings and a ceramic detent. It's got a very well dialed detent, because, you know, that can't be easy with such a, you know, heavy blade. It's hard to show how thick this blade is, but if you look right up in here, you can kind of tell they just have too many facets. You can really tell right here, that's the full thickness. So definitely thick, but you know, they still managed to get it down to a pretty thin edge. Now deploying the knife with that nice long elongated blade hole, you can grab it at the end if you have a stronger detent, and it comes out nice and snappy, nice and fast, free dropper. You can thumb flick it pretty decently easy, thumb roll it, slow roll it I mean. And left-handed, let's see, yep, you can spidey flick it left-handed, you can slow roll it. However, you can't carry it lefty because it's only tip up right hand carry only. Now let's check out the scales of the knife. This particular version has that nice blasted stonewash finish that matches the finish on the blade. You have the Bestech logo right there on the pivot, and you have a nice subtle contouring of the scales, plus all these milled out facets. They got a ton of mill work in here. This is a premium Bestech, and I can see why. Your back spacer kind of goes with the, it goes with the lines of the scales. Almost looks like part of the scales. You have a huge lanyard opening right there. I guess that's what you're using it for. And then you have these windows cut out that go all the way through the blade and help lighten up the knife. Once again, another design aspect that I really like is you can see how this this fuller that goes down the middle kind of starts flaring up and then goes all the way. If you can see, that goes into the blade as well. Bestech did a great job of making that happen and making it flow seamlessly, and Kombou did a great job of designing it that way. Once again, you have that same, you have a nice chamfer going to the side right here, and that chamfer continues right here as well. Just very, very aesthetically nice to look at. All the hardware on the knife is Torx T8, so love seeing that. You have some nice quality countersunk screws here. Oops, sorry about that. This back one does sit up a little bit, and I think the reason for that is this screw right here goes all the way through and is one of the screws that is holding in this blind screwed pocket clip. And you can see the other screw is right there. Not the end of the world or anything. Your pivot is a little bit raised because it kind of domes up, and you do have a D-shaped captured pivot, so it's not going to spin whenever you make adjustments. 3D milled pocket clip that also goes with the lines of the knife. You can see how this chamfer starts right here, and this right here goes down. It's like if you were going to start it and go all the way into the scale. Very, very nice. Now let's check that pocket clip out in the pocket. Now, one thing I noticed right away is this is a beefy knife, and it's a weighty knife. It carries nice in the pocket. You do have, a good bit sticking up, but I'm fine with that. It will be taking up the majority of the pocket. As you can see, this is how far it goes over. Now, it does hug the side really well, and you don't have anything sticking out, so you can put your hand down there. But you will feel it in the pocket, and if you don't mind, chunkier knives, and this won't be a problem for you. All right, now let's open it up. Take a look at the lockup. It is sitting at around 40%. And when I say bank vault, I can't muscle nothing out of this. Bestech usually does a pretty darn good job with their locks. You do have a stainless steel hardened lock interface right here, so if it ever did travel all the way over, you could essentially get another, just change out that lock insert, and you'd be good to go. Access to the lock bar is really good because you have a slight little extra cutout a little bit lower on the show side scale to get to it, and you have a lot of width in between those two scales along with that chamfer, so it's nice and comfortable to get to the lock and easy to manipulate the lock. Let's check it out. Left-handed, yeah, left-handed, very easy as well. All right, I said it's beefy. Let's get a quick weight on this knife. 173.2 grams and 6.109 ounces. Now, I carried this for a while, and I definitely knew I had a knife in my pocket, but it wasn't overbearing. Now, they did a lot of external milling to try to relieve weight and, go with the design aesthetic, but they also did take it a step further, and still look at all that extra milling they did on the inside of those scales. Very nicely done. They did their very best to keep this knife, as light as they could. I mean, it's a big knife. And Bestech does always, if you ever get especially one of the premium Bestechs, see where that balance point is, and they always nail that balance point. I don't think I've ever had a Bestech design knife that was unbalanced, so it's going to feel lighter in the hand when using it. Now for some quick size comparisons, we have a Spyderco PM2 and a Hogue Ritter RSK. It dwarfs both of these knives, and you get about a 1/4 inch more cutting edge than the PM2. Next up, we have the Microtech SOCOM Elite and the Cold Steel Holdout. It's a little longer than the Holdout. It's about the same length as the Microtech SOCOM Elite. All right, for nitpicks and complaints, I don't have a whole lot. The only thing, I like the way the blasted finish looks in the beginning, of course, but it's not my favorite finish because it's gonna take rust a lot easier because you're opening up the pores to the steel. Also, I mean, I don't know if it's coming through, but the more you use it, even if you like to keep your blades pristine, you're definitely not going to want to get this finish if you're going to use the knife. It's going to start putting these smudges in there and getting darker, and it'll start rubbing off that blasted finish. But it's not something I really care about. Also, I talked about, depending on your hand size, whenever I'm choked all the way up, I like to get as close as I can to that so I can really get some control right up on that edge. When I do that, my pinky is landing on the hump of this, causing a minor hot spot. But for most people, you could definitely go right behind it like this. But my hands are too spread out because my medium-sized hands, look, I got a lot of knife sticking out. So I don't know. Just depends. If you have a large, extra large hands, you'll probably be just fine. But other than that, I think the knife is awesome. And I was very, very happy to hear after talking with Kombou that they are making a smaller version, like a medium-sized version of this, and that is going to be awesome. If you like bigger knives, though, of course, this is a premium Bestech, and there's a lot of milling and a big chunk of S35VN. So at $322, do I think it's overpriced? No, I don't. It's a big old knife with a lot of work going into it. You also have a person that is designing the knife that doesn't necessarily work for Bestech. He's one of their designers, and he's got to get paid too. So I think it's priced right. Bestech has just been killing it with their quality control and their overall execution of the designs, and this one is definitely one of those designs. I have another Kombou coming soon to show y'all, and I can't wait to check that one out. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day, and I would love to hear what y'all think about the Kombou and Bestech Fairchild, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.